Nigeria's electricity tariffs. I have George Itomi, is the chairman of the Eco Electricity Distribution Company, and he joins me now as we discuss the latest moves. We're seeing the government and labor unions agreeing to suspend the new service-based tariffs by 1 week. Thank you so much for your time now, and I'd like to get to understand, what played out with the consultations that we're seeing here and what we can expect going forward.
What is playing out with the consultations is that Labour is insisting on a price reduction based on a full understanding of what constitutes the tariff. So from the gas pricing through to generation costs, transmission costs, and then distribution costs, and other elements like the forex and all the other things that go into the MITO, to understand that these tariff hikes are truly what they say they are. And that's going to take a little bit of working. So they've agreed that they should extend the current talks to December 12 to get a full evaluation of how the value chain works. Pending that time, there's a 1 week extension of the suspended tariff, which means for another 1 week, consumers will be paying the old tariffs. In the interim, the VAT element of the tariff will be given up by the government to go in as a relief to those consumers in bands A to C. Band A will experience a 10% reduction, band B 10.5%, and then band C will have 31% reduction. So that would be what would be immediately available to consumers pending the final outcome, when the total picture of what constitutes the tariff increase will then be agreed, and that then becomes the subject of NERC.
All right, but what about the omitted customers? What were the considerations reached between the parties?
Now, with regard to metering, part of the entire service reflective regime constitutes a massive rollout of meters. Now, during the discussions going on, it was realized that close to about 1 million meters are available on ground. So what's going to happen is that these meters will be rolled out immediately, and it is expected that by the end of December, close to that number would all have been metered out. Thereafter, there would be the remaining about 5 million consumers will then be metered through an aggressive metering program that is being supported by the World Bank, by NERC, by the Ministry of Power, the Ministry of Finance, so that unmetered customers then become metered. Meanwhile, as part of the protection for bands D and E, who have a tariff freeze, there will be no migration from one band to another during this interim period of 3 months that I mentioned to you, so that way is to protect them from, because they are the ones who are largely unmetered, so that's one way to protect them. But the metering program will go out as aggressively as possible, working with also, in fact, NEMSA, which is the regulator in charge of standards, would also now be involved in the meter rollout, and they will be part of the consultations going forward. So quite a lot of horse trading is going on as we speak. But for the distribution companies, it is only when all of these things, translate to an order that it now becomes effective to them. But I can confirm to you that as of this morning, they had an order extending the 2-week suspension of the new tariff increase.
All right, now talking about the suspension on the tariffs and how I'm more concerned about how it's going to be implemented. So is it that for metered customers who now want to get power now, is the deduction happening at source when you go and purchase power? Have they been reverted back to the old units?
Yeah, what would happen is that many people, especially those with prepaid meters who may have purchased power before the increase, most likely would benefit from some extension of their time, since when they purchased the meters, it was done at the new rate. And within this period, there was a reversal of that rate. So adjustments would be made for them to enjoy whatever credit they have to cover this period of suspension. For the others, most of which are post-paid customers, that's a lot easier, because in any case, their bills do not go out until towards the end of the month. So that will be adjusted, their bills will be adjusted. But for those who may have received their bills for consumption, if it is received at the new rate, those bills will then be adjusted and new ones will be sent out, so that they will then be given the suspension, the freeze of the tariff that has just been agreed.
All right, now for discos like yourself, what are you hoping to get out of this engagement with all the parties involved?
Well, as you know, we, the discos, have been on this whole issue of right pricing for the industry, because it is inhibiting investments in the industry. This should have been done so many years ago. In fact, it was the basis for the privatization, but that didn't happen. But it's happening now, so we take whatever we can get. But then we are mindful of the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and many consumers will suffer from tariff shock by the quantum leap from what they used to pay to what they should pay now. But having said that, that effect has been mitigated with the creation of the various bands. So the most vulnerable in bands D and E will be protected at this point, whereas bands A, B, and C, who in any event have generally been clamoring for better service, are willing to pay provided they see the service. That's why it's called the service reflective tariffs. So for us, discos will continue at this point to make investments, because the entire new service regime, new tariff regime, gives impetus to the business. So the idea is that we can now begin to go back and raise money one form or the other, and begin to make all the necessary investments in our network areas to then ensure that we meet with our commitments. We're moving, as you can see, to a contract-based market, which means everybody in the value chain is then expected to be held accountable to whatever contracts that they have. The discos will be accountable to consumers if they don't meet with the service levels that have been contracted for. We, discos, to also hope that those other members of the value chain we depend on for steady supply, like the transmission company, generation, and gas, will also live up to their service level agreements and be sanctioned if they too fail on the contract. The key thing here is that it's a whole new ball game in the Nigerian electricity supply industry, and I think we should run with it.